Within 3 is the industry standard virtual engagement platform for pharmaceutical and medical device teams. Meaningful engagement, more effective discussions, faster decisions. Within 3.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to our 5th episode of our next talks. Today's guest is Shwen Gwee, the VP of Digital Strategy from BMS. Hi, Shwen. How are you?
Hi, Dario. Good to see you again.
Great. Thank you very much for joining this interesting initiative where we speak about inspiring pharma leaders. And I would like to start with a very interesting question for you, which we prepared based on your CV and profile. And of course, for knowing you already for a couple of years, you are, of course, a very interesting person. So our first question to you is, as one of the most influential voices in pharma, how do you stay aligned with all of those changes and challenges which we face today?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Dario. And as you can imagine, healthcare and especially pharma, there's been a lot of changes, especially in the last few years with digital and things like AI and ML and telemedicine and all that. And especially in the last year, if you think about how COVID has impacted the way we do things, so many changes, both in terms of the solutions and the platforms, but also in terms of the regulations. And so it's sometimes hard to keep up with everything, but certainly, between attending conferences like yours, Next Summit, as well as also going online constantly to have conversations with people, reading social media posts, articles. There's a lot of ways that you can keep up with what's going on, but a lot of it has to do with, I think, just the community that I engage with and have exchanges with, and really there tends to be this I think sharing and understanding that happens between all the people that are in digital, in healthcare, that we just very open to sharing what's happening in this space. A lot of it has to do with just keeping up with the news, with articles, as well as written by big companies, as well as some of the main digital focused publications. So I think there's a variety of ways, but certainly the community is a big one for helping me keep up with what's going on.
Thank you. Next question. You worked in really amazing pharma companies, from Novartis, nowadays BMS, etc. But how do you maintain people? What is in particular your leadership style?
Yeah, I think leadership style is something that needs to be slightly adaptable depending on the culture of each organization. There are certain ways that I like to approach things when I first join a company. I'm not one to come in and just change things right away. I like to sort of observe and understand what is the current way of working, and then start to, with that insight, start to make some changes based on what I think needs to be done, or where I think, my objectives are and what needs to be built or established in order to get there. So it's really depends on the company I'm in, but certainly that's something that I tend to do when I first join companies. I also tend to want to get very strategic first, and then eventually also roll up my sleeves and get involved so I can understand how things are going as well. And so, like I said, a lot of it depends on the culture of the company, where there's opportunities to do things in a way that's different that I believe in. Obviously, I'm going to take that route, but other places it may take longer to get there because you need to follow what the culture does and approach it in a different way than just going head on and doing things quickly. So again, it depends on the type of company it is. But I think where I have been most successful is where I've had a lot of, if you want to call it, creative freedom to really move forward quickly and being empowered to really do things that that people know they want and are giving me the freedom to actually pursue.
Definitely, Shwen and creativity are synonyms. I can confirm that. So, my favorite question: you served military for 2.5 years in Singapore, and did that shape somehow you as a person and later as a leader?
Absolutely. I mean, 2.5 years in the military is long enough to change the way that you behave and the way that you think about things. It's certainly an experience that I will never forget, and I will not. I have no regrets, and it was a good way of really, in a sense, growing up. I was only about 19 at the time, so you grew up pretty quickly. You learn to take responsibility very quickly. You learn to take leadership and command people. But of course, it's a very different type of leadership style in the military. It's much more hierarchical, and there's a lot more ranks and hierarchy that you have to go through, which you cannot just take into the workplace and apply. But the mindset of how you actually lead people is, I think, the more important thing. And those are the lessons that you take away, is how do you actually inspire and lead men, in that case, because the military is all male in Singapore. How do you lead men to a situation where everybody's tired and they're disappointed or they're exhausted, and then keep them going? Things like that are lessons that you learn.
Thank you. Your current role, global digital strategy, seems extremely demanding when it comes to leadership and how to adjust and change your style of leading people in your team.
Yeah, Dario, as you know, from trying to get time on my calendar, it's a pretty busy job. But
Yes, we know.
I think yes, and I think it's been a really interesting um, experience in itself, because I joined the company at a time when we went into lockdown for COVID, and so I've never actually met anybody that I work with in real life, and I've never stepped into the office because we've been working from home the whole time. So it's been a really different experience for me in this situation where everybody I work with is pretty much a virtual exchange. And so I've had to adapt to that kind of a situation where it's all about short meetings on a virtual environment. I think the hardest thing to that type of experience is I also like to I think that a lot of the relationship building and the types of exchanges you have in a social environment, whether it's over coffee or over lunch, those kinds of moments where you actually start to bond with people on things other than just what you're focused on for doing work, really help to actually build the relationship and the ongoing way that you work with someone. And so those are the moments that I miss, but you try to build that into some of the conversations, but it's hard when everything is back-to-back 1-hour meetings and so on. So when scheduling things like a coffee hour to have a virtual call, or a social time to exchange with a few people, that I think is important to build into, especially when you first start in a company in this kind of environment. So to me, that's some of the adjustments I've had to make, is how do I get that kind of relationship building in a virtual world?
Thank you. I would just like to say very soon, right? Hopefully. And
Hopefully,
eventually.
hopefully. I would love to
Exactly.
be back again. After
Definitely.
all, they did say they're starting to film the prequel for Game of Thrones, so maybe they'll be back in Dubrovnik doing that again soon.
Oh, very nice. I didn't knew that. Thanks for the information. What are the biggest challenges that you face as a leader in any, let's say, company and in overall in our pharma industry?
Yeah, I think the space that I'm in, especially, and many of your guests probably, are in the same area, which is around digital and innovation. I think in the early days, it was, when digital was still reasonably new to pharma, a lot of it was just convincing people, both in terms of why they need digital, but also how to do digital. So it's about, why do we need to change the way we do things? Healthcare is very regulated, as you know, and therefore a lot of the things we do are very, very much based on the way we've always done things, because regulations are so strict that it's very hard to make quick changes. So when digital was first introduced, I think, there's a lot of questions around, do we really need it? I mean, now it's in everything we do, but in the early days, it was tough to convince people why or how to do it right. And even when you did that, it was about working with them to help them understand how to apply it. Now I think digital is pretty well established. A lot of people know how to do it the right way, and it's infused into everything we do. But then if we think about innovation, and especially digital innovation in companies, that's again going through the same thing, helping people understand, what does digital innovation really mean? How should we be doing it in a way that's meaningful, that creates value, that drives better outcomes? Those are the things that you're going through again. So a lot of it is working with people to help understand what things really mean, showing them by example. I think in this kind of a world like where digital innovation is still very much either a unknown entity in terms of the value it creates, or a process which everybody thinks differently about. So the definition might be different for everybody, even though you call it the same thing. One of the best things I've seen that works is really working with people who are willing to work with you and showing through examples of what a good use case is like. And once people see what you mean in terms of how you do it, a lot of times they get attracted to you, and then you start having a broader group that you can work with to start working through and showing examples of how to do it right.
Definitely. Last question in that block, can pharma become a digital health incubator, in your opinion? And I believe your opinion is very valuable in that regard.
Sorry, what was the question? Can
Can pharma become a digital health incubator?
Oh, well, pharma has a lot of incubators already, right? I mean, you think about J Labs, Bayer's G4A program, you think about the Novartis Biome, which I was part of in terms of launching and building out the global network. I think we have a lot of incubators right now, which are, the right thing to do. If you think about the pharma drug discovery model, we are essentially incubators for new drugs. So it's not so far from our normal culture and mindset in terms of how to incubate something from the beginning, from target identification all the way to testing and then releasing a product. It's just that we're used to doing that in a chemical compound world. But in terms of digital, if we start to apply that kind of a mindset and that kind of a process where the incubators are essentially where you do target valuation and validation and phase 1 to 3 type of experiments, and then slowly integrate it back into the business through a team that knows how to manage that product. And then as you go live and release it to the real world and see the value that it creates and continue to manage that, that to me should be a process we are familiar with already just from our experience doing drug development. So I think pharma can definitely be that. We're already seeing lots of good examples. Like I said, the different incubators and accelerators and different pharma companies are doing a lot of good work and bringing a lot of good companies that and supporting them in a way that really drives outcomes and makes a difference in the healthcare world. So the answer to that, I guess the short answer is yes.
Thank you very much. And let's move forward to our quick fire questions. And the first question is Game of Thrones or Star Wars?
Oh, I don't think that's a quick fire. That's a really tough question. I'm a big fan of both, but I grew up with Star Wars, so I think it'll always have to be Star Wars. But also love the Game of Thrones series.
Actually, they filmed both. Also, I think the last Star Wars was partially filmed in
Oh, really?
Exactly.
Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. So
So
both
maybe
are filmed.
there's a crossover maybe that will happen soon. Game of Thrones and Star Wars together.
Might be. Yeah. Maybe Disney will merge something. So who knows? During growing up, who was your hero?
Oh, that's an easy one. My hero when I was growing up was Jacques Cousteau, the
Okay.
undersea adventurer, oceanographer. And when I was growing up, all I wanted to be was a marine biologist because I was inspired by the work he was doing, the documentaries he was making, and so he was definitely my hero.
Nice one. Best place to live?
Oh, that's a hard one. I've lived in many places, and I will say, it's hard to beat San Diego in California. That's a beautiful part of the world. But I've also lived in Boston area for a long time, so love this. And Singapore now is a very different Singapore than when I grew up, and so it's a great place to live. So I don't know if I can answer that as just one answer, but I will say, right now, Boston is where I call home.
In spare time, I do what in most cases?
Beyond the hiking and so on with the family, doing outdoor activities, I also love to barbecue and smoke meat. So two different ways, right? One is the grill that's more short and quick and hot versus smoking, which is much more of a long-term, low heat type of situation. And so I love doing both of those. I also go fishing quite a bit. So those are the things I love to do.
Education or experience?
Yeah, depending on how far you want to go, trained as a behavioral neuroscientist, both in terms of my undergraduate studies as well as my graduate studies. So that was probably the biggest influence. It's funny because I trained to be a marine biologist all the way up until the middle of my university years and then switched over to neuroscience. I think the changing moment was when I went from doing a study of the brain in fish. And that was the crossover moment for me from going from marine biology to neuroscience. And then I was given a choice the next year when I wanted to do an internship between going to the Epcot Center to study dolphins and marine mammals, and also going to UC San Diego to do basically behavioral models and preclinical models of schizophrenia. And so I ended up choosing to do neuroscience, and that was the moment I switched over.
And proudest moment in life?
Oh, that's a tough one. I think, graduating from the army or commissioning as an officer in the army was a big moment for me. I think also graduating from university was another one that was a big moment for me. And then getting married, I guess, was another big moment for me, right? So a lot of proud moments in my life, and my kid is now 10, and the fact that I've brought somebody up into the world in a way that I hope is the best way possible is something I'm very proud of.
Shwen, thank you very much for taking part. It was really a lot of fun, and hopefully see each other in Dubrovnik eventually in 1 year.
I
Take
hope
care.
so too. Thank you so much, Dario. Good to see you.
Thank you. Goodbye.
3 is the industry standard virtual engagement platform for pharmaceutical and medical device teams. Meaningful engagement, more effective discussions, faster decisions within 3.